Welcome to Invisible Me, a podcast centred around invisible health issues and the feeling of not being seen and heard. Yet here I am, standing right in front of you. Does this sound familiar? Well, come join the conversation. Share your experiences. Let's break down those norms and attitudes for the better. This is a safe space to chat with me, Pat. Today, I'm delighted to welcome Rebecca Killick, the Professor of Maths and Statistics, all the way from sunny Lancaster University. So welcome, Rebecca. Good to have you here.
Thank you very much for the invitation.
I'm delighted. The podcast is all about the word invisible, and that can mean so many things in so many areas and for so many reasons. I'm just prompting it a little bit to dive into conversations around health, well-being, physicality, mental well-being. I mean, I can't explain how many ways it can come under the world of discussion around the word invisible. But for me, it falls into my health and my well-being. I'm 16 years living with a condition called fibromyalgia, which is a painful condition, a chronic illness in the muscles of the body. But I'm upright and walking and functioning, so hence the invisible illness. Arthritis, most people will be familiar with painful arthritis, and also I'm quite happy to add on the new label of being neurodiverse. I just kept saying before this, I'm just dyslexic. Now I know why my brain works the way it does. And that's kind of for me, and it's just presenting in different situations in life, in the workplace, at home, in my village, out shopping, walking the dog, and people make assumptions. I don't care what people say, judging a book by its cover, but we do. We are human beings. We make assumptions. And sometimes we could be right and sometimes terribly wrong. But that's down to the individual that's talking to the other person. But regardless, I just seem to adapt. I just did it. Nobody told me what to do or how to cope in life with my situations. So I kind of roll with it. But I do get frustrated sometimes when I'm struggling and somebody makes the assumption that I'm fine and I'm well. So that's where I'm at. Just curious, Rebecca, can you relate to any of this at all in your life?
Oh, completely. Absolutely, completely. So, I mean, from my personal perspective, so I'm similar, neurodiverse, ADHD, and that's autistic and ADHD for those who aren't aware. And so that's kind of always been kind of rumbling in the background, and that's a hard one because that can't really separate about stuff. Separate, from when you kind of, what's related to that and what's related to just general life that people have.
Yes.
Because I've always been that way. But, through...
Were you very aware, Rebecca, from childhood? Were you very aware early? Were you diagnosed early? Were you aware?
No. I was not diagnosed early. I was adult diagnosed. But it's one of those things where you always kind of feel different, and you always kind of think, my brain doesn't see things the way the people's do. But then the question is, how much do you kind of just go, that's because everybody's different.
Yep.
And it takes you potentially takes you a long time. It really depends on the individual to kind of say, or have enough people say, no, that's not really like normal, whatever they mean by that. So that's kind of quite difficult in that sense. But even with the diagnosis, I've always been me.
Yes.
And so I didn't. The diagnosis was really helpful in terms of affirming that actually, so a lot of the struggles that I was going through was not just that I wasn't trying hard enough,
sure,
or that I wasn't wasn't able to cope with life in that sense, the way that other people seem to be able to do it seamlessly. So from that perspective, there was an understanding about myself, which was good.
Yes.
But it fundamentally didn't change who I was or how I behaved in that sense. Obviously, the understanding helps in a lot of ways of being kind to yourself.
And something that we are a bit poor at doing. We don't stop enough, and self-care is key.
Yes.
And I've said to people in different situations, I'll just give, but I'm just Pat. I'm the same Pat I've always been. When they learn something new about me, I'm going, but I'm just me. Like, I can, yeah, I get it.
Yes.
We're just us all the way through. Nothing changes.
Exactly. It is really hard as well. You know, it's a relatively new thing. There's, you know, disclosing my neurodiversity is one of those things where there are people that know and there are people that don't.
Yeah.
And I'm not hiding it from anybody, but it's one of those of there are not always positive reactions from people. And sometimes, you know, they do treat you differently afterwards, and you just are like, well, in some ways that's good because some people treat you differently in an understanding way, and some people treat you differently in a, you know, I thought I knew you, now I don't, so I'm going to be, at least it feels to me like they're a bit off with me, and
Sure.
that they don't feel that they can talk to me in the way that they used to, which, as you kind of say, you know, you say I'm just Pat, I say I'm just Rebecca.
Yeah.
It hasn't changed fundamentally our interactions previously. So
Yeah.
this new information, yeah, how does it change? But I appreciate for some people it does. So everybody's different. Everybody handles information in different ways, and
Yes.
some people feel like they have to do something when with that new information when they find out, and so they can maybe feel like it's a bit of an obligation on them. But everybody's different. Everybody needs different things, and I think as long as we feel empowered to be able to talk about it openly, I think that's without judgment on either side. I think that's the goal we really need to be getting to for that.
That's key. I'm really glad you said that. I wholeheartedly agree. It's more about educating others, and especially in an environment like in a workplace, because you're the same person the day before that you've shared the news with this day. And I do think it's more of patience, a little bit of ignorance, and people, they don't change. So they're maybe not willing to try and understand,
Yeah.
which is a bit sad, and that happens. And that's just them with just kind of closed ideals, or they don't know what to do with people that are different. But we're just us.
Yep.
We're people living our lives and doing our lives the best we can. But it is a bit sad. People do judge and can't cope with change in a way that they go, oh, I don't want to offend. So their behaviour changes.
Yes.
They tailor how they talk. They tailor their mannerisms, their behaviour. And it's so blatant to us. And somehow we still have got to dust ourselves down and carry on. And then others want to learn about it and embrace and will ask you questions and want to understand you more and be better friends and better relationships. So it's a balancing act, but we're just us.
It really is, and there's the other side as well, especially in the workplace, around the burden of educating as well, which I sometimes struggle with. That people think that because I am neurodiverse, it is my job to educate everybody else in what that means. And, you know, that there is often an overhead in processing and understanding and being able to function in the world that already comes with being neurodiverse. And so adding on to that, the expectation that you will explain things to others, and the expectation that you will manage others' feelings about how you react to situations or about how you respond to things is always challenging as well.
Sure.
I've got some wonderful colleagues that are really supportive, and then there are other people who are less supportive. So there's always a mixture, just like everybody's different.
Yeah.
Everybody's reactions are different, and yeah, it's about trying to have all of us be more considerate and compassionate about other people. I think that's where we need to be heading towards.
Exactly. And as you said, the responsibility feels like it's on us to say and explain all the time, and that's exhausting. You know, you're coming out about this new thing about yourself and telling people, and you kind of get to a point like, just can't keep up doing this. I'll make a poster and I'll put it beside my desk and that's it and go away. But, and, that's the thoughts that go through my head as well as others, which are swear words. Anyway, secondly, family. It's not a given that family get it either.
No.
Cousins, relatives, grandparents, aunts, uncles. But they probably always thought, oh, they're the odd one in the family, the black sheep anyway. We've always known something was wrong. And I hate that because it's making it a negative thing, a bad thing. It isn't. It's not a negative thing. It's who we are. That's
I think
put downs and insults are always.
Yeah. I absolutely love my mother, but when I first told her that I was getting referred for an assessment, her response was, "Well, that's a waste of time because it's clearly you're not."
Wow.
And I love my mother; she's amazing. And when my diagnosis came through for her, I think it was a real shock. And obviously a lot of feelings come through around that. And I mean, I don't want to speak for my mother, but we haven't really had that kind of, we haven't finished that journey yet. On what that means in terms of my family and my upbringing and things.
Sure.
And not everybody in my family knows either. So that there is that side too. Disclosure isn't just to friends, family, and work. It is the wider side, and it also carries forward to my own children, in that sense of we talk often about how everybody's brains are different, and you can't always see how other people's brains are working differently because you can't see inside their brains.
Hence the invisible part.
And I think that's the wonderful thing about it. We cannot see the inner workings of our brain. I would love it if we had like see-through skulls where you could, things would light up in different colours on the different ways that they were processing or something. I would love that because...
Oh, I can see you launching off to a new academic study here. But it would be amazing.
Yeah.
And just think of all the opportunities to change maybe the statistics in crime and all sorts. But if we could alter and tweak people's brains, that would be
it's not about tweaking. It's about understanding. It's more like, if I can visually see that, somebody's brain is struggling and it would light up red when it's struggling. Something like that.
Oh, okay. I'm with you now. Good visual. Yes.
Yeah, good visual.
Yeah.
So if there was a part of the brain that was struggling to make connections or things like that, and it was lighting up red, that would be amazing. Whereas instead, what we visually see is maybe somebody stuttering, or we might see somebody shutting down and not responding to people.
Yes.
Or we might see them flapping more, or using stims, things like that.
Yes.
And our brains don't really know how to process what we're seeing as somebody struggling. Sometimes we see it as bad behaviour or somebody being rude. But if we could see, like, if their brain would just like light up red and we could visually see that would be like a game changer, I think, for the whole, because it would no longer be invisible.
It wouldn't be invisible.
It would be a visible thing.
The person listening and conversing with the other person could then change their language, and then the red might go into a nice dull orange or a glowing yellow.
Yes.
Because more information, the correct information added to what the brain was seeing at the time, alerting red, would change, because then, as you said, the interpretation is simpler.
Exactly.
Oh,
exactly.
Oh, I think we've just discovered a new thing to do. 2025, Rebecca and Pat are on a mission. We're going to go driving around the nation in our big bus that's shaped like a brain. And we're interviewing everybody that stops in the street. And we'll have a hat on that has lights coming out of different corners. It'll be like a disco hat. But
I mean, we're not that far away, I don't think, Pat. In all seriousness, I don't think we are. We have caps that can do, EEG on the fly now and things that some amazing companies are producing. So yeah, I'm hopeful that will be something that is there in the future.
I think so.
That would be amazing.
Really do. We're improving, we're developing, we've come a long way. Look at the mobile phone. We'll not even start a conversation on that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm really heartened what you said about your dad, and your mum, taking it all in and digesting it and dealing with it. With dyslexia myself, discovered it in my final year in university. Then it all made sense while I was struggling, but yet still achieving, I have to say.
Yeah, there was still many situations. So I had an event that I was at. I'm not going to name names for the event, but I was at an event and I was chatting with everybody, and at the opening and the initial coffee break, I was having conversations with people, and then we had to introduce ourselves in a public forum.
Sure.
And the way that my body reacted was in absolute terror. This was a sea of people that I've never met before. That's not uncommon for me in my job. But these were people that were from other disciplines. And that is very unusual for me to meet a lot of people that I don't know from many, many other disciplines. And my body reacted in a way that it had never reacted before. And it basically outed me. And so I felt I had to explain why that was the case. And so I basically outed myself as neurodiverse. And it was really saddening that the following coffee break and lunch, people avoided me.
Oh no.
And it was
Wow.
it was really, really hard because I'd seen like the morning, the welcome and then the morning coffee break. And so that for me was like my first time when I had disclosed to people that I didn't know.
Yes.
Because most of the time I'm disclosing to people I do know.
Sure.
So the first time I disclosed to people I didn't know, and there was such an obvious negative reaction. Now, over the course of the next couple of days, there were people who did come and say hi to me, and they were wonderful people, and they kind of got to know me as me and not the reaction that my body had portrayed to people, which I understand is so for those who are listening, it's I was shaking quite heavily and couldn't really get my words out very well and things, and took a long time. My brain was processing extremely slowly, but it was that for me was the first time when I was thinking, oh, maybe I do need to think more carefully about who I disclose to.
Well, I'm sad that you had to go through that.
Yeah.
And I'm actually quite shocked. I really am, as you are. I'm really shocked. I just thought the world had somehow moved along a little bit, and even just manners and etiquette, people would just be, speak and make small talk and then move along if they were uncomfortable. But really,
exactly. It was. I mean, it was one of those things where the stark reality for me was it was just such a contrast. And as I said, over the course of the next few days, where as we were doing lots of small group stuff and things, I think people started to realise, oh, actually,
she's okay.
She is a normal person. You can just go and talk to. But so it did get better, but it was just those first couple of the coffee break and then the lunch afterwards that was like, whoa, okay.
Well, I'm very impressed. You endured it and got through it and continued to meet the next day and kept going.
Yes.
So that's commendable. So
well, as you just said, we're so used to just getting on with it.
Yeah, we are.
That was exactly what you said. You just pick up and you move on. And it's really hard. It takes so much energy.
Yeah. It is.
But part of it is that people maybe also don't see. So the kind of invisible side of it is people wouldn't have seen how much that hurt me and how much energy it did take to then not just hide away in the next sessions, to actually show up the following day. All of that energy has to come from somewhere.
Somewhere, yeah.
And that is the hard thing that people don't see, and maybe potentially don't realise is happening in the background. And a lot of the time with neurodiversity, we have one of the kind of traits is you have stronger emotional reactions, or some people, I shouldn't speak for everybody, but I certainly feel I have much stronger reactions, both positively, so I get much more joy out of positive things, but I also get much more negativity about the things that are negative in my life. So it's like the range of emotions is much wider. I don't tend to have a lot in the middle. I tend to have stronger one way or the other. And so that is really hard. And we were touching on mental health earlier. It kind of falls into that
it does.
side as well. So people don't see the struggles that you go through as a neurodiverse person around that. They see the fact that you might put a smile on your face when there's a comment that somebody makes that hurts you.
You turn up.
And you try really hard.
Oh, well, thank you for sharing that. For folks listening who are actually living the same emotions that we are going through. It is very different for everybody, but to slightly find a common thread, and that is the effort, the energy of keeping going and presenting and showing up and managing our daily lives. And that's our home lives and our work life and social life. If we have a social life, because that's another podcast.
That is another.
It is not
that
easy.
is another one.
That's another podcast.
Yes.
But it is exhausting, and it does physically have evidence on you can have some visibility evidence. I think we're super resilient. I think we're an incredible bunch of people. But the visual of the brain and the colours is very useful.
Yes.
And sharing your emotions and how you handle it. Thank you for that. Can I just ask you, is there anything else you use that is visible to help you cope? I use a fidget spinner, or I play with a bit of Blue Tack. I'm a fidgeter, full stop.
Yes.
I've always been a fidgeter. Before I
Yes.
even knew who I was as a person and all my warts and all. Is there anything, Rebecca, little tools or tips you might be able to share that others could maybe say, I'm doing that, or, I hadn't thought of that?
Oh,
Only if you're comfortable to share.
definitely. There are tons of things that I do. So one is that I always have something in my pocket that I can play with. So it doesn't necessarily come out as something in my hand,
Yes.
but I will often have my hand in my pocket and I'll be playing with either a coin or a key ring or something like that in my pocket.
Rings are good.
I quite often like having 2 coins, or a coin and a button. They're my favourite ones at the moment, because the button has different textures on it as well, and then you can turn them around each other and things. So they're the kind of coping mechanisms I had. I've always played with pens. The amount of pens with broken lids and stuff around is just... insane. I was the kid that used to get told off for clicking pens in the class all the time. Right now I'm actually playing with the back of my phone case. So
there you go.
My phone case, I have a little stand that kind of flips up so I can put my finger in it, and I play with that all the time. And it rotates as well as as going up and down. So
movement's key. I feel movement as well as texture is key.
Yes.
For me, again, as you said, it is texture. Some people you'll see, they'll play with their hair.
Yeah, I do that.
But that's what they're actually doing. They're soothing themselves, playing with their hair. My hair's too short.
Mine is not. I do play with my hair.
So yeah, Blue Tack, paper clips, whatever's sitting nearby.
Yes.
A book. Sometimes a page feels really nice. Whatever I'm wearing, my clothes are always cozy. They're always hoodies with fleeces inside. I have to have that softness. So it's very much of a texture, how it feels. But then it's kind of a mindful action because it's repetitive. I'm moving something, I'm doing something, and my brain is focusing on that subconsciously while I'm still having a conversation and doing my job. And it just grounds me.
Yes.
It doesn't fix me. It just helps me ground so I can continue with the rest of the day. And occasionally there is odd moments that are even more so. And then I have to walk away. I will have to go out, sit in the garden, be around trees. For me, it's nature.
Yes.
And there are days when you're just, as you said, recovering from an enormous overstimulated environment or a situation, almost like being in that conference. You just wanted to go and walk by a river or get outside.
Yes.
But that we automatically self-help, but having little tools also around you, just do it. Who cares if the world's watching? Do it. It makes you feel better.
Exactly. And
in my book.
for myself, definitely walking meetings. And this was something that my PhD advisor introduced me to. So
Oh, I like that.
we're very lucky at Lancaster University. We have a woodland trail.
Wonderful.
And my office is probably a couple of 100 meters from an area where you can access the woodland trail. So that for me is one. And I absolutely loved it. A few weeks ago, one of my PhD students came into the meeting and took one look at me and said, "Shall we go for a walk?"
Wonderful.
And I just loved it because he came in, he recognised that I don't know how, but immediately recognised that there was something that I was struggling with.
There was a need.
And by that point, I hadn't even referenced it myself, because I do struggle to recognise these things still before I get overloaded. So it was just wonderful because he said, "Yeah, we can go, we can walk, we can talk while we walk. If you need silence, that's fine."
Very intuitive person. Wonderful.
But to have people around you like that can recognise and understand and be able to help by just offering suggestions, even when you haven't realised it yourself, it's really nice.
Yeah,
really nice.
That's invaluable. I'm glad that person's around in your life. That's wonderful. I'm going to wrap it up because I think we've given lots of little nuggets.
We have, yeah.
But I'm going to ask if it's okay we have a chat another time and follow up on a few other little subjects, because I think Rebecca in the house has a lot to share.
Yes, no, that would be wonderful. Yeah, we've only spoken about neurodiversity today, so yeah, always happy to talk about other things.
That would be great. Me too. And I think I will come over on site and go for a walk on that Woodlands, because I'm not too far from Lancaster. So that would be amazing. It's been a pleasure and delight talking to you.
Yes, thank you very much for the invitation again.
Thank you for sharing, and much, much appreciated. Bye for now is what I'm going to say.
Bye.